Nuka Radio 92.7.
You're listening to all new Nuka Radio and NukaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate you. And so one thing happened that I'm not entirely certain what the purpose of it was, and that is the defacement of a mural featuring one LeBron James that was put up in Los Angeles. There was a guy that painted it. It's a really good looking mural. It's a painting of LeBron James in a Lakers jersey, and it says the King of LA. And it's pretty cool, if I don't mind saying so. And someone defaced it. They put, 3-6 in the finals. We don't want you here. And that's when I realized that there is a clashing of types of people out there in this world. The people who love the Lakers and hate LeBron, or the people who love LeBron and hate the Lakers. And they're conflicted people right now. What does your hate triumph over your love, or vice versa? They don't know what to do with themselves. They haven't the foggiest idea. It's like having to work with your worst enemy. I remember when I was in elementary school, there was a kid that picked on me every single day. That guy's name, his name was Linwood. I don't remember what his last name was. His first name was Linwood. Why did that boy have a last name for a first name? I have no idea. But that was his name. And Linwood picked on me every single day. And one day I had to do a group project with Linwood. And never before have I been so conflicted in my life, because part of me wanted to not do any of the work and just make our group fail so that Linwood would also fail. The other part of me wanted to do the work. So I was confused. I was conflicted. This is how it has to feel if you are, in fact, a person rooting for the Lakers and you like the Lakers but you hate LeBron, or rooting for LeBron and you love LeBron but you hate the Lakers. Because now what do you do? Now where do you go? So that guy that painted over the mural of LeBron, he represents all the conflicted Laker LeBron fans that don't know exactly where their loyalty ought to go, to their love or to their hatred, which is like the number one reason why you don't live your life fueled by hatred, because it puts you in some really awkward situations. But they don't know exactly which one to go with. And it's obvious to me. Don't you like winning? I don't understand. Like, if you are the Lakers, even if you don't like LeBron, if LeBron gives you another title, and by the way, your team has been trash for the last half decade. If he gives you a title after the garbage dump that team has put their fan base through, just the doldrums of basketball, if he can get you a title after that, in the next 4 years of his contract, if he can get you that, then come on. What are you whining about? What is the problem? Because you know that Laker fans love to count their rings. That's the one thing that they like, because it's the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers have more rings than anybody in the entire league. It's them. And the Lakers would love to catch the Celtics. I believe they are 2 behind. They'd love to catch him. If he gets you one, it's another thing you get to count. It's another great player that's worn your colors. Your team has been hot, flaming garbage. Absolutely hot, flaming garbage for the last half a decade. Come on. What are you whining about? What are you complaining about? What appears to be the problem? Your team hasn't been any good. Wait, what are you complaining about? I don't understand. How much hatred do you have for this guy anyway, that you don't like winning? I thought that was at least the most American thing there. Like, Americans don't care about a whole lot of things, but Americans care about winning. Right? Like, this is the reason why, even though America's not represented in the World Cup, people are still watching the World Cup. You just want to see who will win. You might respect them slightly more, too. It's one of the reasons why when the World Cup is around, we actually pay attention to soccer. Well, who's going to win? When the Olympics are around, we actually, pay attention to track and field and swimming and gymnastics. These sports happen all the time. They don't just happen every 4 years. But we only care then because there's a big show about winning, and Americans love that. And I would have thought, no matter how much you hate LeBron, if you're a Laker fan, and no matter how much you hate the Lakers, if you're a LeBron fan, that you would at least be able to put aside your differences for the sake of a W, which your team could really, really use. You're listening to all new Nuga Radio and NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. There was a really interesting interview that was done with USA Today and Dominique Wilkins. And one of the things that Dominique Wilkins said in the interview, and I wasn't really able to find any audio of it, it was transcribed on USA Today. But one of the interesting things that came out of that interview was that Dominique Wilkins was talking about what he had done as a player, that people forget that he pretty much carried a team by himself his whole career. In the Eastern Conference, when in the 80s, the Eastern Conference was tough. And he gets left out of these sort of greatest of all time conversations. And I think that that's true. I think a lot of guys get left out of these conversations in large part because we're simple people. We don't want these conversations to be complicated. And it is complicated. We want this conversation to be as simple as Jordan or James. That's how simple we want that conversation to be. And it's not that simple. Right? Because then what do you do with Kareem? What do you do with Wilt? Wilt averaged 50 and 30. And you could make the argument that the league was not as tough then, right? Like, everybody wasn't as skilled as Wilt, and so he was just playing with a bunch of smaller dudes. But the fact of the matter is, the league was more physical then. Things that are called a foul now would never have been called a foul in Wilt's day, in Kareem's day. But we don't give Kareem the shine. Why don't we do that? Why doesn't Kareem get invited into this conversation with Michael Jordan? Right? Like, why not? Why doesn't Bill Russell get invited into this conversation with Michael Jordan and LeBron? How did this come to be a conversation that merely included LeBron James and Michael Jordan? That's it. That to me is the most puzzling thing about any time we wind up talking about this stuff, is we simplify the conversation because we don't want to have complicated conversations. Right? Which, by the way, I would make the strong case is that is everything that's wrong with America. We want everything to be Republican, Democrat, and then that's it. It ain't that simple. No issue is that simple. But we don't like to have real conversations. We like to make things very binary. It's either this or it's that. The problem is if it's either LeBron or it's Michael Jordan, what the hell do you do with Wilt? What do you do with Kareem? What do you do with Magic? What do you do with Bird? And I like the Sam Jordan way of doing this. Because Sam Jordan's got a really good system, which is he's got a tier system. Look, there's a tier 1 greatest of all time players and tier 2 players. And you could make the strong argument that Dominique Wilkins is a tier 1 guy. I think at first glance, yeah, well, maybe he's a tier 2 guy. But no, Dominique Wilkins is a tier 1 guy. Now, Sam Jordan's, his tier system gets to be silly because he's got LeBron James in tier 2, which is insane. LeBron James is going to pass everybody in all-time points, in all-time assists, in all-time rebounds, in all-time, maybe not blocks, but he'll be top 5 in blocks. I mean, LeBron James is going to pass everyone in everything. That can't be a tier 2 guy, right? Like that's absurd. That is insane. But I like the system. even if I don't like the way it's laid out, right? I think Dominique Wilkins, deservedly a tier 1 guy. This is a man who, without really having a jumper and playing in an era where there were threes, averaged 25 points a game virtually his whole career. Right, like just virtually his whole career, especially near the end. This man tore his Achilles tendon, which, as I mentioned yesterday, is one of the most horrific injuries in all of sports. This man tore his Achilles tendon. He averaged 25.5 points the year before he tore the Achilles. He averaged 25.5 points the year after he tore the Achilles. Nothing changed. Do you know how freakishly good of an athlete and of a player you have to be to come back from an injury like that and nothing changes? Like, I'm worried about DeMarcus Cousins. Everybody is just penciling in the Warriors into the NBA Finals because they've got Boogie. Well, look at them. They've got an all-star squad. No, they've got 4 guys who are all-stars just like they did last year and 1 guy with 1 foot. Maybe Boogie's an all-star again. Maybe. And certainly not this upcoming season because he can't play. And he won't be ready to go until February, maybe. Like, I don't think people realize how important your Achilles tendon is to all the moves that you make in basketball. Basic moves like running and jumping. You know, all the moves you need to play basketball. I mean, it's insane. Dominique Wilkins came back from that, nothing changed. Also, Dominique Wilkins played back in a day when people had real nicknames. Now people's nicknames are their initials and the number that they wear. Chris Paul wears number 3. What's his nickname? CP3. Oh, well. Contavious Caldwell Pope. What's his nickname? KCP. That's boring. You just use that man's initials. That's not a nickname. Dominique Wilkins, that was a nickname. He was the human highlight film. Now, come on, man. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about Dominique Wilkins, because you could turn on TV any given night. Now, granted, raising my hand here, I'm 28. I was born in 1990. Me turning on my TV any given night did not include Dominique Wilkins. I'm too young, but it's okay because that's what dads are for. My dad would tell me, you turn on your TV any given night, and if Dominique Wilkins was playing, you sat down and you watched him play. You just did. Right? And I think we forget about him and we forget about a lot of these other guys that played because, A, we seem to only be concerned with the guys that were able to win a championship. Even though to win a championship, you had to be on a really good team. There weren't guys in the 90s and 80s carrying teams to a finals by themselves. Dominique, it was just him. And that's one reason why the Hawks didn't get to participate in a finals in his career. You've got to have a great team. I mean, there's no two ways about it. You've got to have a great team. Michael Jordan played with Scottie Pippen, played with Dennis Rodman, great team. Magic Johnson played with Kareem, played with James Worthy, great team. Larry Bird played with Havlicek. You know what I mean? Like, he played on great teams. You can't win championships without him. Right? Like, even Jordan. And Michael Jordan led his team in scoring for 10 years out of the 11 that he played with him. But without a great team around him, that doesn't result in rings. You know, and I think we forget about these guys that didn't win championships because they say, oh, well, he didn't win a championship, so I guess that doesn't really mean anything. No, that guy's still great. That guy's still really great. And a tier 1 player, right? The tier system is more interesting because it makes more sense. There are lots of guys who are great in lots of different ways. Now, if you want to talk about your favorite player, well, that's a different thing entirely. That is a very, very different thing. You're listening to all new Nuga Radio and NugaRadio.com, 92.7 FM. And what would you call those Lakers teams if not super teams? They built them. I honestly, we've been watching teams have super teams forever. Our issue is not a matter of how loaded the team is. Our issue is a matter of the build. Our big problem is not what the team consists of, but how the team is assembled. Because we didn't have a problem when Steph and Clay were playing together and three-point shooting the league out of existence. Right? Like, we didn't have a problem. Why? They got drafted together. It's a little unfair to have Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen on the same team. Both of those guys are capable scorers. Scottie Pippen is like the prototype to LeBron James. He had the body and the size and the speed and the skill. He just didn't have the pressure. But him and Michael, I mean, that was a defensive, like those are your wing players, and then like defensively, you can't get around them. Either one of those guys can shut down a leading scorer and embarrass them. Like, that's not fair, those two guys being together on one team. But they were drafted together. They were drafted onto the same team. So when you look at it, people's real problem is not the squad itself. It's the assembly of it. Like, somehow it makes it better and more satisfying to people if it got drafted than if a player chose to go there. And I wonder if players had shorter contracts back when Dominique Wilkins played, would he have tried to go to another team? Or would he have tried to recruit somebody to Atlanta? I think he would have. I think you'd be crazy not to. Right? Like, what guys are doing in the NBA today where you see a team that's really good, you want to win a title, and you go there to win a title, is the most normal thing on earth. We do this with every single other job. If I don't like the job that I'm at, I go somewhere else. And usually the place that I go to already has a bunch of great employees, already has a bunch of awards, already has a great vision. I'm not going to go to some place that stinks. You want to spread the talent out? Maybe. But how does that help? Then you just end up with a bunch of mediocre teams instead of any good ones. I say this all the time. People think they want parity. No, you don't. If you wanted parity, you'd be fine with the Eastern Conference. That's what parity looks like. Parity looks like the Eastern Conference of the NBA right now. There's a bunch of mediocre teams. The 76ers will be really good one day. The Celtics will be really good one day. But they're not great yet. They're still young, and they've got to learn how to win. The 76ers are still young. They've got to learn how to win. Maybe Miami puts something together and gets to be something of a threat. But that's a bunch of mediocre teams. All right, like maybe Milwaukee figures out what to do with Giannis. But at the moment, like, none of those teams are great. Toronto, can Toronto ever stop being afraid of the moment? We don't know. But what we do know is all of these teams are average to below average as hell. That's what we do know. And as long as we know that, our major problem is going to wind up being this. If you want parity, you're going to have to be happy with that. Because that's what it's all going to look like. Separate the stars except for the ones you draft? That just seems weird. It's like my problem with a lot of these big blockbuster movies. And people don't really even seem to have a problem with whether or not the movie is good or whether or not the movie is bad. They seem to have a big problem with the business decisions that these studios are making, right? Like, if you look at the DC movies versus the Marvel movies gave you a bunch of individual movies, and then the team got together in the Avengers. The DC movies largely stink, and they tried to make their big movie happen fast, and then they didn't put all the little movies to build it up first. And people go, well, they should have used all the littler movies to build it up first. Maybe, or maybe the movie just stank. Like, the people's problem doesn't seem to be that the movie was terrible. People's problem seems to be that they didn't build up to the movie correctly. So it's not a critique of the art, it's a critique of the business decision, which is strange. When people talk about a team is too loaded and a team is too stacked, they don't appear to be talking about the teams. They appear to be talking about the way in which the teams were built, which is a weird place that we are in the world of sports these days, because that seems to be the thing that we concern ourselves with. And me too. I love NBA free agency. This didn't used to be something that people cared about to this extent, that fans cared about to this extent, that you're checking Twitter all the time to see, well, I mean, did the Rockets re-sign Clint Capella? I don't know. And we're overly concerned with the method rather than being concerned with the actual structure of the squad, which is that a good team's going to have a better chance to build a good squad than a bad team. It's going to be more gambling. It's going to be more risks. Kawhi Leonard situation. I'm going to unfold it next. Clutch with Keon Rose, New Radio 92.7 FM.
Traffic, news, and information. Nuga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
The Dalton man who was hit by lightning has died. Egan Stanley was celebrating the 4th of July at the Dalton Golf and Country Club when he was hit by lightning. He leaves behind a wife and 2 sons. Busted. A traffic stop leads to a massive meth seizure as Dade County Deputy Haley Getty pulled over a car for a window tint violation and no tag light near the 2459 split. Something seemed off about the car, so a canine unit was called in to sniff for drugs. Deputies say they found a half a pound of methamphetamine inside the vehicle. 19-year-old Josh Enzi and 21-year-old Jesse Odell both arrested. And Richard Smith has been arrested, charged with attempted first-degree murder. Cops say he stabbed Wesley Jackson in the back outside the Honest Pint. Jackson told the cops that Smith followed him on his bike and stabbed him 4 times in the back with a 3-inch knife. Val St. John for Nuga Radio, News Talk 92.7, Action News now.
Chattanooga Morning News with Russ and Val. Weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on Nuga Radio, 92.7 FM.
Chattanooga weather.
Warm and muggy weather will continue out there through your nighttime with fair skies. Overnight lows only 70 to 73. More typical summertime weather returns. That may last for the next several days. Hot, humid afternoons, highs lower 90s with only spotty afternoon showers and storms. For lunch or dinner, come to Guthrie's, home of the original cold and fried delicious chicken finger with their special world famous sauce. Open daily, locations in Trenton, Signal Mountain, and Ringgold. Go get Guthrie's, it's always good. And I'm Sworn G12, Chief Meteorologist National 4.
Nuga Radio 92.7.
I got my business up and running and it's already expanding. I got lucky. Lucky because I found Signal Voice and Data. Signal Voice and Data can incorporate all of my business information sharing and communications seamlessly, keep my costs down, and let me work more productively with endless connectivity no matter where I might be. That's called working smart, not hard. Go to signalvoicetn.com and bring the future of communication to your business today. signalvoicetn.com.
Hey, dude, check this out. Have you ever seen one so big?
Whoa, look at the size of that.
Look at this little itty bitty one.
Wow, that's really small.
They have them big, small, and everything in between. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives at the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. We're talking about over 40 brands of knives, including Benchmade, WR Case & Sons, Booker, and all the Frost Cutlery brands. Now, Sam, you've been to the cutlery shop. Is it amazing?
Spectacular. The knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. They have knives, swords, kitchen knives, ammo, and reloading supplies, plus survival gear.
It's the knife shop at Frost Cutlery, open 7 days a week. Hey, girls, you're going to love this. We're going to the knife shop.
Hey, let's not tell them they have ammo and loading supplies.
The knife shop at Frost Cutlery opens 7 days a week. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives. You're going to love the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. The knife shop.
And tell them David Toulis sent you.
Do you hear that? That, my friend, is not what you're thinking. That is the new 2018 Indian Chieftain Dark Horse. Yeah, Indian. Indian motorcycle is more than a bike. It's an experience, an American icon. And Indian Motorcycle of Chattanooga is the only place you'll find their new 2018 line. Are you ready to ride? Join the club. Go to Indian Motorcycle of Chattanooga. Just look for the sign, 153 and Amnicola. Indian Motorcycle, the true American original.
You want more business. You want to increase your bottom line. You want to spend less on advertising, imaging your business, and general expenses. You need Trade Bank. When you join Trade Bank, you'll get the benefit of free advertising in our monthly magazine, tradebank.com, emails, and mailouts. Join Trade Bank now and receive your Trade Bank debit card with trade credits to spend any way you want. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call now for a free consultation. 877-2202. That's 877-2202. Trade Bank of Chattanooga.
Chattanooga Paint and Decorating would like to remind you it's so hot out there. And guess what? Your deck is taking a beating. It's probably starting to show wear. If you're hosting friends for the 4th, get your deck entertainment ready with a fresh coat of stain and protect it from heat, sun, and rain with a quality sealant. If you want to get to work, Chattanooga Paint and Decorating want to help you. For exterior paint, stains, sealants, and supplies, stop by Chattanooga Paint and Decorating today on Hicks and Pike across from Valvoline or online at ChattanoogaPaint.com.
Nuga Radio.
Are you brain dead? Still voting for pathetic liberals? Take 3 hours of Sean Hannity from 3 to 6.
Nuga Radio.
Then call us in the morning between 9 and 11.
92.7
Nuga Radio.
You're listening to All New Nuga Radio, nugaradio.com here on 92.7 FM. The show is Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. Apparently, the young lad, Trae Young, is heating up. The most criticized person in this building has to be Trae Young. It has to be. I can't think of a single person who has been torn apart by all of the sports shows more. And let me say basketball player, because now that I think about it, Butch Jones is actually the most criticized person in this building. Butch Jones isn't even an actual coach anymore. He's an intern. He's a grown man, and he's an intern. And that's about as good a ripping as anybody gets. But Trae Young, for a guy very young, having not done a whole lot in this world yet, we get after that guy a lot. So I just want to give Trae Young credit where it's due. He's starting to figure it out, which I think you had to know was going to happen. A lot of the shots that he was taking, I still don't like them. I think that they're overwhelmingly stupid shots. If you're going to shoot and take a long shot, I don't mind that. But 2 seconds into the shot clock, 3 seconds into the shot clock, you didn't pass the ball, you didn't move around, you didn't try and get your teammates involved. I personally am not a fan of that. That ain't what I'm about when I'm watching guys play basketball. But also, Trae Young has otherworldly range. I mean, it's ungodly, the distance that this guy can shoot from and accurately. And those shots are starting to fall. And I got to give him credit for that because there's a reason why he plays the way he plays. If you had the range that Trae Young had, you'd do it too. You do it too. It's like people with sports cars drive recklessly, right? Like, and the rest of us who are driving out there, like, man, that guy's driving crazy. Why is he doing that? Somebody get him to stop. But I drive a Civic, so like there's only but so much wild driving I can even attempt to do. You know, you put me in a Lambo, is it different? Maybe. You'd at least be tempted to use the power. All right, there's no denying that. If you had the range that Trae Young had, you'd have to use it. What else would you do? He's special. He's special. I still don't know if the act works in the NBA. I have to see it, right? Like James Harden, I've always had this issue with him for years that I don't think his act works in the playoffs. And it almost worked. It almost worked. I actually think that, okay, there's a way that it can be effective. There's a team that you can put around that guy where what he does works. I can see that. I've got to see it with Trae Young now. I've got to see, does his act work in the NBA? Because he does have a way of wearing himself out with his play style. He's not very big. He's a small guy. He's got a small frame. He's got solid handles. And he's got shoot it from the moon ability. You know, I mean, he can shoot it from just about anywhere on planet Earth, it feels like. Is that going to be enough by itself? Probably not. But like, what does Atlanta have to do to make Trae Young successful? Because it looks like Atlanta wants to build a version of the Warriors. And I believe their GM was actually an assistant GM when the Warriors drafted Steph. And I think that what Atlanta wants to do is, hey, if you can't beat them, straight up copy them. You know? Let's build a version of the Warriors in the Eastern Conference. And that's going to be tough to do because the Warriors, I think, got very lucky in getting Steph and then getting Clay. But they're probably going to go after another shooter who can really defend. They're going to follow the Warriors' blueprint about as close as they can get it. But I don't know if you can find a Clay and a Draymond in the NBA draft the way I think the Hawks are going to have to build a reasonable facsimile of the Warriors. I just don't think that there's multiples of those guys out there. And I also don't think Trae Young's Steph. That's the other issue. He's great, but he's smaller than Steph. Like, we think of Steph as being small. Steph's 6'3". He's NBA small and that he's kind of skinny, but he's not small. Trae Young is actually small and certainly smaller than Steph. So if you are the person that you think Steph's small, Trae's small. And I think at this point in the game, like Steph is a much, much better shooter off the dribble than Trae Young is. I mean, Trae Young is a good pull-up shooter, but Steph is in a league of his own. And I think to compare a guy that young to Steph when his career is just starting out, it's really unfair to him. And I really do wonder what the Hawks plan to do, because this is the plan. Build the Warriors of the Eastern Conference. That appears to be the game plan. Well, you're going to have to find your Clay, and there aren't a bunch of those walking around. Like, sooner or later, the Hawks are going to have to make some very aggressive free agent moves, and they haven't been able to be successful doing that. You know, I think if you're the Hawks, what I would do next year is make a really hard push to get Clay. So you don't have to try and figure out if there's a Klay Thompson replacement out in the world. You just get Clay. He'll be a free agent next season. He'll be available for you to go after and get. But again, the Hawks have not been successful in luring free agents to Atlanta. And that's always been confusing to me. They can afford to pay, right? Like, ownership is not insane, kind of insane, right? Like the Hawks owner, she was showing the world her lucky pin that she pinned on her bra strap before she went to the NBA draft lottery. In fairness, the lucky pin worked and they got the top 3 pick of the draft, but you know, it's weird. She's a kooky, odd person, but like, it's not dysfunctional in Atlanta. They went out, they got the player they wanted to get. So do you, if you are the Hawks, make a push? But how do you get someone to go to that city? It's not a dysfunctional team. It's a good city. Like, Atlanta's fun. I'm down there fairly frequently just because I like it. I mean, I don't know. How is it possible that a city like that has not convinced anybody to go there? Like, Atlanta and DC to me are the two teams that I've never understood why they can't get anybody. Like, the Wizards can never convince anybody substantial to go there, and the Hawks can never convince anybody substantial to go there. And that's weird, right? And like, because I look at New York, every now and then the Knicks deceive somebody into going there because it's New York. You know, the Lakers get people to go there all the time. Like, the history of the Los Angeles Lakers almost feels like We will steal a big name star from somewhere, right? We're trying to get Kawhi from the Spurs. We got LeBron. Once upon a time, we got Shaq from Orlando. We got Dwight back when Dwight was a big star. Right? Like there are cities that can do that, but like DC is a top 5 city in terms of market size in this country, and Atlanta's top 10. How is it that both of these cities can't seem to convince people to play for them? I know that LA's got the reputation of winning, but, you know, the Knicks don't. The Knicks trick people into going into New York all the time. And I can't understand how that continues to happen. Meanwhile, Atlanta can't trick somebody. Atlanta has parties. Atlanta has strip clubs. Atlanta has things that young guys with way too much money like. How can Atlanta not deceive one person, one big name free agent into coming to Atlanta and locking that person down for like 6 years? I'm not sure, but it seems impossible. It doesn't seem likely. You're listening to All New Nuga Radio at NugaRadio.com. You're on 92.7 FM. So Kawhi Leonard is attempting to force his way out of San Antonio. He did have a face-to-face with Greg Popovich. Greg Popovich has opened up to the idea of trading Kawhi Leonard, which I told you, it was never going to happen without a face-to-face with Pop. So that happened. But nobody wants to trade for Kawhi. And Kawhi Leonard, Finals MVP, multiple Defensive Player of the Year winner, one of the best two-way players in the league, and certainly after LeBron and KD, I would say the best two-way small forward in the league. Nobody wants to trade for him. And that's only happening for a couple of reasons. One reason this is happening is Kawhi wants to go to LA. And it's too much of a risk. But I also should point out Paul George wanted to go to LA. Then the Thunder took the risk, traded for him, and convinced him to stay in Oklahoma City. They convinced him to stay in a smaller market. I think if you're a big market, someplace where you can say, hey, Kawhi, we've got billboards for you. We can put your name all over this town. We can put your face all over this town. You might have a chance of convincing him to stay. The issue is nobody knows how healthy this dude is. I mean, nobody seems to have a clue. How healthy is Kawhi Leonard really? And there was an anonymous Eastern Conference GM who said, look, we'd trade for him right now if we knew he was healthy. But we don't know. And he could put out a video, and if a bunch of scouts watched it and said, hey, we like what we see, we try and get him in a heartbeat. And I'm concerned about Kawhi and his judgment, because Kawhi does not seem to realize that he lives in the year of our Lord, 2010 and 8. And if you live in the year 2018, you can do so many things via technology. But his uncle has gotten into his ear, allegedly. These are what the reports say. His uncle has gotten into his ear and for whatever reason convinced him that he's got to be in a big city, and specifically Los Angeles, which in fairness is where he's from. He's got to be in that city to be the kind of star that he wants to be. And Kawhi Leonard is secretly more cocky than we gave him credit for because he's quiet. We assumed he was humble. That's not true. But Kawhi, you don't have to leave San Antonio to be a star. Russell Westbrook is a star in Oklahoma City. Paul George became a star in Indiana. Victor Oladipo won Most Improved Player of the Year in Indiana. Right? Like, these are not big time places. The world is falling in love with Giannis Antetokounmpo. in Milwaukee. All right, these are not big markets. You don't have to be in a big city to be a star, but you do have to have a personality. Giannis has a personality. Victor Oladipo loves to sing Frank Sinatra. Russell Westbrook is the human personification of anger. Paul George has a pretty awkward but pretty funny sense of humor. Kawhi Leonard doesn't talk. The thing that's holding Kawhi Leonard back from being a star isn't exposure. He's an NBA champion. People like Kawhi. But he doesn't say anything. Ask an NBA fan, because most NBA fans know who Kawhi Leonard is. But ask an NBA fan, what's Kawhi like? I don't know. Right? Like, you ask an NBA fan, what's LeBron like? And you're going to get the entire array of emotions. Some people will have negative things to say about LeBron. Some people will have positive things to say about LeBron. Ask somebody, what's Kevin Durant like? There'll be people who'll say he's a cupcake. He's a snake. There are other people who say he's an assassin. He's a killer. Ask people what Kawhi Leonard is like. You get no answer because nobody knows. Because Kawhi doesn't talk. Because Kawhi doesn't say anything. Nothing. That's not going to be good for your brand. And I got bad news for you, buddy. Going to LA ain't going to fix it. Going to LA is not going to suddenly make people have an opinion on a guy who doesn't say words. He's not. You know, he's a great basketball player. We all love the way he plays defense. It's alarming. He's got long arms and gigantic hands. It makes him one of the best premier defenders on the planet, but he doesn't have a personality, and he's never going to be a star. And you can put him in LA. It'll help. It'll make it easier. But it ain't going to make it that much easier. So that's the first thing I worry about with Kawhi, because that's like, if you live in 2018, everybody knows you don't need to live in a big city to be a star. Have you ever heard of YouTube? There are people who make tons of money just putting up videos on YouTube. Do you think these people live in Los Angeles? Some of them do, but most of them don't. People who make big money on YouTube are like me and you. They just live in a town. That's it. So I don't know if you're Kawhi Leonard, what you're thinking there. But the other issue is, listen to the anonymous GM. Put out a video of you working out. Right? I remember reading a story a few days ago about a guy who really, really wanted to work for a company, so he put his resume up as a video on Twitter. I mean, you can use visual technology now. People don't have to guess and speculate what is your health. What's your status? Can you shoot? Can you defend? Are you mobile? Do you look tight or do you still look fluid? These are the questions that scouts and GMs want answered because, if the Spurs are going to give up Kawhi, the Spurs are going to ask for everything. They are going to leave nothing off the table. They're going to ask for all of it. And Kawhi is worth all of it, whatever all of it is. But only if he can still play, which nobody has any idea as to whether or not that's still the case. He's got to put something out there, right? It can't just be text. It can't just be a medical statement. No one's going to gamble on that anymore when you don't have to. This isn't the 1960s. The number 3 pick in the NBA draft this year was a guy named Luka Doncic. And we had HD video on this kid going back years and years and years. Remember when Darko first came into the league? And I'm not saying Darko is Luka, by the way. But remember when Darko first came back in the league? Where was the video on Darko Milicic? There wasn't. It was the word of Joe Dumars about a secret workout in a room and nobody else saw it. Nobody else saw it. Right? And then you want to say, well, okay, there's some players that are coming over from Europe that are really good, and they are. but you have to find the grainiest YouTube videos to figure out who these people are. Not anymore. Not in 2018. We can now find you. We can now see it. And you're telling me that Kawhi Leonard, a guy who lives in America, who was grown up in Los Angeles, doesn't understand how to use video to promote himself? And this is the same guy that's talking about how he wants to be a star? Yeah, no, that's not. I don't actually trust your ability to be successful in that endeavor. Right? Donovan Mitchell is a rookie. And Donovan Mitchell is more of a star than Kawhi Leonard is. Why? Because we know about Donovan Mitchell. Because Donovan Mitchell reaches out to people on social media and just hangs out at pool parties with fans. On the 4th of July, he asked, where's a pool party? Can I find a pool party? Someone tweeted at him, and he arrived at their house. He actually did it. I mean, you've got to find a way to display yourself. Like, Kawhi Leonard is not going to be a star no matter how good he is, because he doesn't have a personality. And he doesn't know how to use technology to fix the fact that he doesn't have a personality. Right? Like, if you really, really want to go out on a date, let's say, have you tried online dating? It doesn't fix everything, and you still have to like go through like just mounds of, worthless possible dates, but it does eliminate the fact that you maybe don't have enough time. Yeah, Kawhi Leonard, use technology to finesse the situation. Otherwise, don't even bother trying to become a star. What's the point? You're listening to all new Nuga Radio, NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Clutch with Keon Rose. Remember, folks, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch, and I'll see you in 23 hours.
Hi, David Toulis. I made the move, and I hope you will too. David Toulis, Nuga Radio, 1 o'clock every weekday afternoon, 1 till 3 here at Nuga Radio.
92.7. 3, 2, 1.
Chatham, Nuga Radio, Digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
Jonathan Walker, the man convicted in the Woodmore bus crash that killed 6 children and injured many more, now stands accused of statutory rape. The alleged victim in this case is a 14-year-old girl who lived in the house where Walker was staying while he was in Nashville. The Dalton man who was hit by lightning has died. Mr. Stanley celebrating the 4th of July at the Dalton Golf and Country Club when he was hit by lightning. The 37-year-old rushed to Grady Memorial Hospital where he was later pronounced dead. Kelly Smitty, the man accused of exposing himself inappropriately from his car in the parking lot of the Hamilton Place Mall, blames sedatives on his alleged behavior. He said in a statement from the TFP, "I do not have a drug problem. I do not have a deviant behavioral problem. I have a depression problem. And for the first time, I plan to seek professional help." Mr. Smitty, a writer for the TFP. Russell Stroud, Nuga Radio News Talk 92.7 Action News.